Thank you so much. There you go. Ladies and gents, welcome along. Thank you. It's lovely to see you. Thank you for coming out on one of the hotter evenings of the year. So hello to anyone who's just passing by and thought there's going to be air conditioning and I'm going to hang out here on my way home. That's fine. Welcome to In Conversation With, a series presented by Fraser and Fraser. I say a series. It's the first one. Let's not get too optimistic. Let's see how we go. As Simeon said, I mean, somebody's been very, very clever here. We are discussing DNA, the very record of our familial existence, which is kept within our own cells. And here we are in the lovely London archives, the very record of our beautiful city. Very smart, I think. Someone's put this together well. Our panel today are both true communicators of their respective professions. In the middle here, Professor Turi King, Director of the Milner Centre for Evolution at the University of Bath, but perhaps most famously, in 2012 she led the DNA verification during the exhumation and reburial of Richard III of England. And I wanted to ask, how does that happen? We don't DNA test every exhumation, do we? So
no, we definitely do not. But right. the purpose of the excavation was, well, for us archaeologists, was can we find the friary buildings with the hope that we might find remains that would look like they could be Richard. As it turned out, little did we know, 6 hours 34 minutes into the excavation, we hit a little bit of leg bone. Now, you can't excavate human remains willy-nilly. You have to have a license, and we don't know where we are, and we've got money to lift up to 6 sets of remains. So we keep excavating, and then we come back and we find this skeleton. So now we have to try and identify. So DNA is just one of those things. Now, the way our DNA is inherited means that we had to find individuals who are related in a particular way. So we have got 2 pieces of our DNA that are passed down through the generations in a really simple way. They are mitochondrial DNA, which comes down through the female line, and Y chromosome, which comes down through the male line. So we had female line relatives that were found, looked at their mitochondrial DNA, tested it against the skeleton, and there was a lovely great match. We had male line relatives, and I knew about there possibly not being a match going into this project because my PhD, which Jeff knows about, was on the link between surnames and the Y chromosome, and Jeff was involved in one of my projects. And so I knew that it's quite possible for the Y chromosome that a man has is not the one that's on the genealogy, it's the one of his biological father, and it's known as a false paternity event, and that's exactly what we found with the Y chromosome. So I had 5 living male line relatives who on the tree looked like they were relatives. One didn't match the other 4, and it was a case of going back to him and saying, hello, do you know about anything in your family tree? As it turned out, they did know there was a possibility. The other 4, they match each other, but they don't match the skeleton. Now, I'm not worried about that because I know that that's a possibility and we've got all of these other strands of evidence. But that's essentially how we did it.
That's more depth than I was expecting. Thank you. It's all good. Turi's also served as Professor of... I'm interested in the communication piece. You also served as Professor of Public Engagement and Genetics at the University of Leicester. Nobody has worked harder to popularise and communicate the science of DNA. You'll know her from the BBC Two genealogy series DNA Family Secrets, presenting, somebody nodded there, very good, presenting Ancient Murders Unearthed for Sky History, and the podcast Head Number 7. Oh, no. On your left, Neil Fraser, one of 2 lead partners in Fraser and Fraser, the largest and oldest probate research business. It's a family business now, 3rd generation. But you've also fought for transparency, professionalism and regulation in the sector. You was one of the first people ever to become a Silex chartered paralegal. I wanted to ask you, why do we need regulation for this?
So the problem we have at the moment in the legal system and the probate legal system is very, very unregulated, which is great. It's not a barrier to entry, so anyone can take out probate, anyone can administrate an estate, which is perfect. Apart from at the moment, the only legal question is, are you going to do this correctly? And after that, we allow them to do it correctly. When nobody checks, nobody looks back. I don't believe that somebody and other firms of genealogists and probate researchers should be managing millions of pounds worth of someone else's money without somebody scrutinising them and without some line of independent regulation and someone looking at it. So that's what happened with the Association of Probate Researchers, which turned into PPR, the Professional Paralegal Register, which then got bought out by Silex. Silex very kindly introduced a chartered paralegal, and that's the route which me and 13 other of my case managers took. So.
Fantastic. Neil is also an exceptional communicator, best known not by you lovely people, by students who don't get up before 3 in the afternoon, for being the linchpin of Heir Hunters, the BBC One daytime TV show which tracked down unexpected beneficiaries to unclaimed estates. A round of applause for your panel, please. So I better throw some questions at you. Take us through the history of what DNA has progressively allowed us to do, because there's genealogy is your department, and there's genetics, there's forensics. What's it allowed us to do and do well?
Do you want to go first, or do you want me? What would you like?
Why don't you go first?
Okay.
Throw the hot potato until you're happy.
Okay. It's like, no. So my kind of first interest, and probably the first time it was ever kind of used in a genealogy case, was actually DNA fingerprinting when it was first invented. So this is Professor Sir Alec Jeffreys, back in 1984, discovers that you can use DNA to identify individuals and close relatives. And when people think of DNA fingerprinting, the first thing they think of is the police shows, and usually that they take a DNA sample and it pops out about an hour later on a printer, and that kind of thing. So his first case was actually an immigration case, and unusually, because they're normally used for paternity cases, now this was a maternity case. This was a young lad who had been in Ghana, had lost his mum, and her 3 other children were here. He comes back into the country, and the Home Office doesn't believe that he's actually her son. And they were able to do DNA fingerprinting to show that she was his mother. And so that was kind of the first times it was being used basically for genetic genealogy, though they didn't really realize at the time. Genetic genealogy really kind of kicked off in about 2000, a little bit earlier than that. And I ended up at the very kind of start of this, because my PhD was looking at the link between surnames and the Y chromosome, as I was saying. And it was basically kind of using that to look for people who are related to each other at more distant. So DNA fingerprinting, you can only kind of do parents and siblings and children. Y chromosome, you can go much further. Mitochondrial DNA, you can go much further. And now it's moved into autosomal DNA testing. So this is looking at the rest of your DNA, hundreds of thousands of genetic markers. And with that, you can look for people who are first, second, third cousins, up to about fifth, sixth cousins. Starts to get a little bit fuzzy at those kind of bits. But that's kind of really what you can use DNA for, building family trees based on genetic evidence, and then using archival evidence to build that.
Neil, what's it meant for you and for your business and your practice?
It changed the conversations which we were having, and AI will do that in future, because we're having the same conversations about AI now as we used to have about DNA. And this was where everybody saw the 23andMe kit come out. People were giving them away for Christmas. Take a swab, send it into a company, get back your family tree. And surely you're going to be out of business. It's easy to do. The same as you said with the computer on the TV, you put it in, you end up with a picture of the suspect. So everyone said that we could build a family tree just by taking DNA, and I knew that was never going to be the case. The same as I knew that you can't take a DNA fingerprint and come out with the right person, because there's no measure of age, height, or anything like that inside that. So the conversation changed on that, and then I was talking to someone, and we were talking about deoxyribonucleic acid. And I was like, how do you know that? And then I was like, well, there's other bits, and they can only test down the Y chromosome. How do you know that? Well, I just remember it somewhere around. And then we started talking about mitochondrial DNA and the building blocks and the instructions within the cells of the DNA, and your territory, not mine. And I just found the whole subject fascinating, about what we can, what we can't do, whereas I assumed that we would be able to test relatively easy, but then realised that the barriers which are there between genders is the biggest barrier. And the subject is just massive and fascinating, and we could go on for a long time about it.
I want to spin this round, and both of you can fight over this if you want. To the untrained eye, I mean, you mentioned the idea of, an hour later, the police go, yes, that's our man. This is not a black and white scenario, is it? That sort of thing doesn't happen.
It can
be. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's the sort of thing that you can do a DNA test and you go, yeah, your siblings, or that's your mom, that's your dad, that kind of thing. But when you're getting out to sort of wider family trees, no. I mean, if somebody comes back as a second cousin from the genetic matching. So first of all, what happens is they match at a certain amount of DNA. And so that tells me, okay, so that's might be a second cousin, might be a second cousin once removed. But that's where the family tree building comes in. You can't do it in isolation past a certain point.
So it becomes probabilistic.
It's probabilistic.
It's more predictive than that, isn't it?
Well, it's the sort of thing, you can get an amount of DNA sharing. It doesn't tell you exactly how somebody's related. For that, you need to do the proper genealogical research. Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned mitochondrial and autosomal. So, give me a guide that I can understand.
Okay.
As to the progress of science in that way.
In that area. So, when we first started looking at DNA, mitochondrial DNA was the piece of DNA that we looked at first, and that is because it comes down to us from our moms, and there are so many copies in our cells that in the early days of DNA sequencing, that was the bit you could get your mitts on really easily and sequence. As things progressed, we started looking at the Y chromosome, which comes down through the male line, and autosomal DNA. So we have got 23 pairs of chromosomes, and our autosomes are chromosome pairs number 1 to 22. And you've got one from each pair comes from mom and the other one comes from dad, but it's a little bit more complicated than that because when sperm and egg are being made, your mom's 2 chromosome 1s that she's got, one from her mom and one from her dad, they line up next to each other and they swap bits of information. Then one gets passed down. So the one that you inherit is a mixture of the ones that's come from her parents. So it's a little bit complicated how the DNA gets passed down.
Okay, and you said it's not one size fits all when we spoke about this. What did you mean? Why does it not allow us to make perhaps a set of determinations and decisions in a meaningful way?
Well, so I suppose it depends on what it is that what your question is would determine what kind of DNA testing that you want to do. So that it would send you down particular paths to try and answer particular questions.
Okay. And what's it meant for genealogy? How have you been applying DNA meaningfully to get results?
From the very basic steps is where you have a child, possibly illegit, possibly half blood, and there's a family rumour that they are not a child of the family and therefore they should be taken out. As soon as you start dealing with probate and family and money, then greed takes over and envy takes over. And the more people you can knock off your family tree, the more money you're going to get. So the first things we always get when we're dealing with this and the suspect bits of family are, they're not a real child, you need to DNA test them. You need to test them, they're not going to be real. Now we'll come on to, I've seen some of your questions, Nick, I'm afraid. So we will come on to a different bit on this later. That's the first questions we get. The next bit, and we've got a live case going through at the moment where someone has done an ancestry DNA test and has come back and said, I'm related, therefore I need to be put on the family tree. It's, again, slightly more complicated than that. And there's a lot of questions along the way. We were talking beforehand, and actually there are some tests we can do now, which will possibly prove greater entitlement. So it's the questions which come up. At first, always starts of, this person shouldn't be included. They're not entitled. They're not blood family members. Always that way. And then later on, we get in the bit, well, we should include him as well. He's a family member. most of the time, we don't need to use the DNA to solve that side of it, because we just need agreement from the other beneficiaries and say he's been brought up as a child, she's been brought up as a child, therefore we should treat her, and therefore we make a deed of variation and we just bring it down. However, the DNA question is becoming more and more frequent. I looked at it back through some of our archives. We did our first inquiry back in 2016 about DNA. We had a next one up in 2018. We had 2 in 2020 during the pandemic. And we currently have 5 live cases going through. So it's becoming more frequent as more people think they can solve it.
It's that small enough.
Yeah, me too.
Not just me then. Yeah.
You've got to remember that Fraser and Fraser are involved in generally in testacy cases. We deal with about 6,000 a year, so there's not a huge number. We're not talking about the whole UK population coming in. So it's a small sample and it's a small bit of them. So.
Well, there we go. I thought crime was venal. It turns out families. That's where the real venality lives. Listen, you both operate in genealogy in your own ways. Give me some stories or case studies. You mentioned the sort of the ancestry claims suddenly appearing. Where are you successfully using DNA to make determinations? Both of you.
So ours is generally where we've got a case of, I've got the result in my book here, but where someone was insistent that they were a member of the family. We did run a DNA test. We were able to obtain DNA from the deceased. And there was a full legal track of the where the DNA came from, which is what's very different with the ancestry, and we got a full chain of custody on saying who this has come from. And the test came through back as inconclusive. So where do we go on inconclusive? Because it's not a yes that they are entitled, it's not a no that they're not, and in fact it's leaning slightly more on the side that they are entitled. That case has ended with a agreement and a deed between all the beneficiaries, because we've turned around and said, well, if she wants to push and take it through court, then it's going to cost more than the deed is going to cost to settle this out. If we'd come back and said, no, she's definitely not entitled, then it would have been wiped out straight away. But we're inconclusive, so shall we make a deal? And that's the right outcome, I think.
I mean, that's the legal piece. I mean, in your space, obviously it's not about. I mean, it doesn't have legal ramifications. How do you?
No, well, so I have done a case where it was somebody wanted to get their father's name on the birth certificate. So in that way, it was a case of doing her DNA, building out the family trees, and going, yes, this is your father, and then writing up a report for the court, and then having that put on her birth certificate, which was hugely meaningful to her because she'd always wanted to have that information. And I do pro bono. People email me all the time, and if I have time, I will just take a case on, solve it, do the next one,
What sort of cases? I mean,
it's usually people, they go, I'm trying to find my dad, or I'm trying to, I've got one at the moment where she's would like to find out who her grandfather is. So it's a case of, right, okay, so these are your DNA matches, this is mom's side, this is dad's mom's side, these are all the people we don't know who they are, how are they related to each other, and you build the family trees and you can work it out that way.
Are you getting ethically challenging results, either cases or results from cases? Fortunately, no. I mean, basically most of them have been fairly kind of, I just want to find out who my parent is. That's usually it's the father's side. Ones that I can't kind of do, if somebody's adopted, they have to go through an adoption support agency, that kind of thing. We have had some ones where you kind of think, oh gosh, mom was quite young. Was this consensual? And that's a trickier, because you will never know. And that can be a slightly tricky. You can't, you don't know. And so that can get into an interesting kind of situation where you're kind of thinking, I don't know what went on there. Particularly if neither of them are still alive, then you can't answer that question. Yeah. Wow. For both of you in your different sort of professions, I come back to this thing. Us ordinary, untrained people, we live in a remarkably black and white world. We want to assume certainty, and we expect science to deliver certainty as well. Where do ordinary people misinterpret what you can do, and how do you sort of manage expectations? I mean, especially, Neil, this goes to the courts, doesn't it?
DNA is one of the tools and one of the building blocks to be able to help put the family tree legally together. It is the assumption is that once you've got the test, that's it, it's done. A lot of the time the test comes back as inconclusive, and if we go back to looking at the amount of shared DNA between a person and their parents is 50%, 50 of each one. If you go back to grandparents, we're down to 25%. An aunt and uncle is, again, 50%, but when we start coming back down, we get 12, very quickly down to 7.5, 3, 1 point, not a lot.
I can't fault your maths.
And we've only taken 5 steps.
Yeah.
So if we're testing DNA, trying to link on 5 steps, and there's only 1 or 3% of shared DNA between them, you can understand where the questions come. And what we're trying to do with beyond reasonable doubt, we're trying to prove that somebody is or is not a member of that family. And if you've only got 3% to test on, that's not really enough to turn around and go beyond reasonable doubt, that is a family member. So it is one of the building blocks. It's a building block which enables you to categorically rule someone out, but most of the time it can't particularly rule someone in. And that's, I think, how I look at it.
The more distant relationships that you're starting to get, you're running into problems.
As soon as you get in.
Yeah, unless you can do MIDO or Y. That's part of it, yeah.
I want to throw to both of you a question. I just found that when we spoke about this when we first caught up, this was one of the most interesting things that I was not expecting. We put the question further to what you've just said, Neil. Should DNA be used to prove or disprove an inheritance? And you said yes to proving it, but no to disproving it. I thought that was the court of public opinion will judge.
Yeah.
I just thought that was a really interesting answer. So take me through your thinking on that.
We're into the ethics sort of area.
Yeah.
And if somebody has been brought up as the child of a set of parents, and their birth certificate says they are the child of those parents, and that may be not even their parents, we may be talking about grandparents, or maybe even great-grandparents, and then we then do a test and we prove that the father or the grandfather or the great-grandfather is not who we think they are. Is it moral, is it right for us to say, well, that person needs to be wiped off the family tree and taken away and shouldn't get the inheritance and shouldn't they've been brought up all their life as a child? And that's the question which I put. And we're lucky we haven't really tested it massively in the court so far. There's enough lawyers here will probably turn around and say, well, we did do this, but it hasn't really been tested on disproving inheritance. There are 2 cases, I think, around. And my feeling is it should be used to help include someone in inheritance and include someone in probate, but not disprove.
Is that tricky, though? Because what happens if you test somebody and you find out someone who thinks they are? I mean, not the person in question, but... So there's a case I know of that I've been involved with where 5 siblings take a DNA test, and 1 is not a full sibling, but had no idea. So then what do you do in a case like... So this is me as a geneticist.
That's Neil's moral point, really.
Yeah, I find it fascinating. If they were brought up, does it matter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you agreeing? This is a disaster.
Well, no. As a geneticist, I'm the first person to tell you that DNA is only a part of the picture.
One tool amongst many.
Yeah.
But I mean, also the point is that there is, whatever the science, there is a moral judgment to be made about the nature of a family.
Yeah. What is family?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh, Gosh, they are agreeing it tonight.
Oh, are we supposed to be getting into fisticuffs?
No, we are agreeing. But from the legal point of view, the one of the cases I did read about, and this was a testate case, well, it was a trust, in fact, so similar to having left a will. And the trust said, I leave it to my children. And the court deemed that although they weren't one of them wasn't a biological child, the court deems that they were, in the essence of how the trust was written, a child, and they came in through that line of it. So although there was a case going through the court trying to disprove of someone's inheritance, it wouldn't surprise you if I said it was for £14.5 million. So there was quite a few good reasons why families fell out and argued about it, and greed kicked in again. But the court actually ruled that they should be included in that trust. So it sort of leans on my side where I'm saying they, morally, I don't think they should be included.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I want to move to something we promised we'd talk about DNA kits, and we've mentioned ancestry. Let me just ask you, lovely folks, show of hands. Have any of you done one of those packet DNA kits where you send something? Okay, quite a lot of you. I mean, I appreciate I'm preaching to the choir a little bit, but okay, more than half of the room.
A lot of my staff as well, and I'd have thought some of them should be able to trace them.
A lot of your staff as well. Okay. So a question to you both. You're not going to like this a lot. Do people understand what they have done and what they get with a DNA kit?
Well, I think some people do, some people don't.
Go on.
Yeah. I mean, some people they've read into it. They're completely knowledgeable. They know what they're doing. They've got a specific question, and they go and they take the test, and they know what they want to do it for. Other people don't. They just kind of go, "Ooh, I'm going to go and do this." And I'm forever cautioning people about, well, if you are going to take one of these DNA tests, just be aware that you might find out things that you weren't expecting.
But there are two things here, aren't there? There's the sort of potential for family disruptions. Oh my goodness, they aren't who I think I am.
Yeah.
But then there's also, I don't quite understand how the numbers work, and therefore I reach.
Yeah. So this is particularly with the sort of ancestry portion of it. So I get a lot of people who might go, "Ooh, but I'm 0.X% whatever," and they take that must mean I have an ancestor who's such and such. And I go, no, so that's not quite how it works. It's who you're matching in the databases. So next time that database gets updated, that little percentage might disappear and it's not there, and you're getting better matches somewhere else. So I always tell people to take it with a pinch of salt for the lower percentages.
That must make you popular.
Yeah, I know. I get
People do put faith in
Of course they do, and they think they have some glamorous, amazing ancestors. I'm really sorry, probably not. I mean, you might do, but probably not. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit like everyone who is convinced they were reincarnated was always Napoleon. Never a serf. Cool. Neil, same sort of question to you. You said people don't.
I think we only need to judge about how it seems to be an acceptable Christmas, birthday present or gift.
Father's Day present.
Father's Day. And the cost of the test drops just before Christmas to make it an ideal present.
Before Father's Day.
Yeah. And when somebody takes a test, what they don't realise is it's not just them who it's affecting. It's also their wider. Not
family.
Even their immediate family, and relatives from that side. And there may be reasons that parents haven't said something or put down. I've heard of people who've run a test and found out that their father wasn't their father, but then they had hundreds and thousands of siblings because they came from a sperm donor's side of it.
Yep.
Probably could have been a better way of finding that out rather than through a £79 kit. So I strongly feel that people don't know what they're getting into when they take a kit. There are certain kits which have focus on entirely different things. And Ancestry, which is a massive database worth billions of dollars a company, compared to a MyHeritage one, which is possibly better in Europe and certainly better on Jewish ancestry. But do people realise that when they take it, or do they go, well, the Ancestry one costs £79 and the MyHeritage one costs 120, so I'll take the £79 one?
Yeah, it depends on the question.
So the quality of the database matters.
Yeah, the size of the database,
Yeah, yeah.
what are the populations that they've got in there, the size of it, all of that kind of stuff will affect the results that you get.
Whether you tick the box to subscribe
Yeah.
and continue getting health updates.
Yeah.
Also true. I mean, and you know, you guys are experts. So are people interpreting this stuff right or not? I mean,
I worry about the health side of stuff.
okay, go on.
Because, for example, 23andMe will do DNA tests and they'll tell you that you are, I don't know, for one of them tells you that you're great at kind of metabolizing caffeine. But what they don't do is they don't test another marker which will have an impact on the first one as to whether or not, it's all of this kind of thing. You're getting a partial picture. And I think that I always tell people the NHS is one of the best genetic testing companies in the world, or companies, bodies. Always go through your GP for genetic testing for anything to do with health stuff, because you don't have a genetic counselor sitting with you when you're getting the results back, and
but we're addicted to that little dopamine hit of knowing something about yourself.
yeah,
You know,
but
that's the problem.
yeah. But some of the stuff they return to you is things like eye color and whether or not you have freckles, which just look in the mirror and you can. So there's that kind of stuff.
Or it says you've got freckles when you haven't, and then you're petrified.
Well, this is the thing. So the way they do it is they take people with, it's called genome-wide association study. So they'll take lots of people who have freckles, and they go, right, what are the particular genetic variants that these people with freckles have, that these people over here who don't have freckles, they don't have, or it's not a high frequency. And then they take you and they put you on this thing, and they say, you have a 67% chance of having freckles. Doesn't mean for sure you will have them or not. So, yeah.
So that doesn't give you any factual insight.
No. It gives you a probability.
Yeah.
And that's I agree with every bit of that, and entirely for this country, for the UK, is entirely what people look at, and we start talking about the educational argument about what it does. Go have this conversation in America, and it's an entirely different story, because anyone who's spoken to someone from America, they turn around and go, oh, I'm originally Irish, or I'm from Scotland, or I'm from, not only, oh, have you met my ancestors?
Yeah.
You know, but Nick pointed,
he lives in Dublin.
yeah, Nick pointed out earlier that America's 250 years old in 4 days' time. So everybody is an immigrant, everyone is descended from somewhere, and America loves to be able to connect themselves back. You look at the results on Ancestry, you look at the results on any of them, they're beautifully color coded, and they come with maps and bar charts and pie charts, and they're displaying the same results in God knows how many formats. And they look at it and go, look, see, you can see 65% Norwegian. Well, you're not. You're American, and someone else was Norwegian before you. So we in the UK, and I know I'm putting people into the same box, but as soon as we start dealing with America, then it's an entirely different show, an entirely different story, and it sums up why there's so many people have taken the kits and the tests.
But yes, I mean, we just, it's a dopamine hit. We like the idea of knowing about having a connection to the past, but that's not how science works, is it? It's not quite that simple.
Again, it's what your question is. So for people, for example, if they're adopted and they don't know their ancestry, so I don't know if Matthew made it, but Matthew, who was in DNA Family Secrets, was talking about popping by. So Matthew, when he was adopted, he was told that his father was Jamaican. And when we did the DNA testing, his father clearly was not Jamaican. He was actually from the Seychelles. And that can be hugely moving for somebody to find out something about their ancestry if they didn't know, or if they're donor conceived, or if they don't know who their parent is, or that kind of thing. That can be hugely moving. But I think for a lot of it, I mean, a lot of people do have a pretty good idea, well, my ancestry is going to be from this country or whatever. So it's always, I suppose my thing is, what are you asking the question for? What do you want to find out?
And I think we've had that same question. The society members will agree. When you tell people what you do for a living, and they say, oh, you should trace my family tree sometime. And you go, well, why? Yes, I quite enjoy research and it would be quite fun to look at it, but why do you want your family tree? And well, I'll be interested in it. And so, well, to me, the interesting bit of your family tree is the journey you take there and actually finding and discovering it. And that's what gives you the hit, the dopamine, when you find that record. And certainly if it's someone you've been looking for God knows how many years, and you suddenly prove it is the right bit. And the same, I think, is with the DNA test. Why do you want it? You know, what's it going to show you? It's going to show me that I'm Anglo-Saxon British with some Jewish heritage, and okay, I probably already knew that.
I want to throw one more sort of grenade in here on that. You mentioned, Turi, that you know, the NHS should be protected as this extraordinary data source. It is the world's greatest, well, possibly Chinese ones are better, but pretty much the world's greatest collection of human data. Human health data, and don't get me started on who owns that and how. I don't want to do that today, but the data issue around some of these kits is extraordinary. We were talking about the collapse of 23andMe. Neil, what happened there? Because it turns out that data wasn't as perhaps secure as we might want.
And we can probably go slightly further on privacy issues. So 23andMe was worth $6 billion. It was one of the first kits to come onto the market to enable you to test. I think it was £250 or £300 at the time. It went all the way down to almost $50 to have this test. Company worth $6 billion, 2022, 23, and then had a huge data breach. Not only contact information, but all their DNA data was 7 million records were accessed, linking the family records, the family relationships between them, and that is going to be on every bit of the dark web wherever. That company then filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. At one time was worth $50 million, so from 6 billion. It sold for 250 million. It's still around, but it caused a massive shake-up in the market to protect data and who has access to data. And the other bit I was talking very briefly on, and some of the reading I've done in the last week or so about this, is the Golden State murderer, mass murderer. He pleaded guilty for 13 murders, 50 rapes, 200 robberies. So certainly someone who should be locked up. That was solved because of the police the US police at the time were able to take a DNA sample from a rape kit from the 80s, and were able to convert that through family tree DNA and run that through a genealogical process and find some cousins and build the family tree from those cousins to work out a few suspects. And sure enough, they checked on DNA on a discarded coffee cup, and they got their man 20 years later. That caused a stir because family tree DNA and MyHeritage both had privacy policies saying they would never give out that DNA to law enforcement unless they were ordered to by a court. They did. It caught someone who absolutely should have been locked up. That case may never happen today because that data is now fully locked up and fully locked away, so you can't do it. So
you heard it here first. We're defending murderers.
Because you can. So you can use GEDmatch and you can use family tree DNA. You apply, because I'm working on cases now, so this is forensic investigative genetic genealogy. So this is where you can take DNA from unidentified individuals, from serious crimes, and you can generate a profile that is very similar to ones that Ancestry and 23andMe use. You can, under certain circumstances, upload to GEDmatch, family tree DNA, and the people who are on those databases have to opt in to be a part, whether or not they're happy to be part of these kind of cases. And I'm one of these people who thinks that, yeah, it probably should be introduced here, but with guidelines and guardrails on. I think if there's informed consent about people know, yes, my DNA is going to be part of a database that could potentially be used for criminal cases or unidentified individuals, morally, are we not bound to try and bring those people to justice if the people on the databases are aware that their DNA could be used. And it's not their DNA, actually. You can't see their DNA, but you can see that they might be a genetic match, and from that you have to build out the family trees. And I think if there's guidelines and guardrails on doing that kind of work, then yes, I think it
The moral imperative.
yeah, there's the other moral imperative of, if we could stop somebody from killing again or raping again, should we not be doing that? And then if we've got unidentified individuals, do we not want to give them back to their families? Identify them and give them back to their families? Provided the people on the databases know that their DNA could be used for this, the DNA matching, then I think we should be using it for specific cases.
So my point bringing it up was not to say we should or we shouldn't.
Yeah.
Is that this has happened, and now it's being locked down to make it much harder.
Yeah, to make it much harder, which is correct, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the bit which is more concerning. It is still a relatively new science. I mean, I remember someone in 2000 who was working on the Human Genome Project, and the timeline for them to map the human DNA was 10 years or 20 years or
They
something.
started in the 90s, yeah, and they did
Yeah,
their first
right.
draft was kind of 2000. Then they properly did a really full draft about 2022. It was relatively recently.
It's commoditized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remarkable. I mean, it's really interesting that you bring these ethical issues up. Every technology that comes along has benefits and drawbacks. You've got to take the good with the bad. So I wanted to finish looking at the future, and the obvious. Sorry to swear in front of you all, but AI. How is AI going to change the discipline of DNA in forensics, in genealogy, etc.?
Well, in genealogy, we're seeing it loads already,
Right.
because, I mean, for example, if you go into Ancestry and you add somebody to your family tree, give it a few minutes and you'll suddenly have 500 million hints where it's kind of gone off and found a bunch of records that may or may not be the right person, which is why you have to come in and go in and properly have a look at them and make sure, does that look like it's actually correct? But it's been transforming building family trees and finding records. It's just
Is it doing the heavy
extraordinary.
lifting helpfully, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be careful, because I mean, it's obviously going off and looking for strings of characters, and it'll come back, and you go, yeah, no, that's not the right person. What are they thinking? That's not the right person, or that actually, yeah, that is the right person. Oh, that's the census record. Oh, fantastic. Oh, I can have a look and see, like, who are they with? Who else is in the house with them? That kind of stuff. So it can be amazing for speeding up building family trees.
Lovely.
Yeah.
And what about you, Neil? When we were speaking earlier, and you said, last time I was in this room, it was all microfiches.
I quite like those things.
It
was dark, you could hide in the corner. No one could see you.
AI is fascinating, but also massively misinterpreted. AI really being the large language models, LLMs, and the bit which enables a computer now to determine text rather than a jumble of letters or a DNA sequence, but actually be able to make out those words and texts. As AI develops, I'm sure from a DNA perspective, it will be building a large language model on the genetic code, and that will be fascinating, what it will and won't be able to do.
Will we end up interpreting a load of potential, genetic diseases or whatever? Like
It's already doing. It's already going. Oh, that's a potential. And doing things like this might be good for a vaccine, that
Right.
kind of thing. So it's already doing that kind of
Tailored
stuff. Yeah.
drugs to you as an individual.
Personalised,
personalised medicine,
That
yeah.
should be a really
Yeah,
positive.
yeah,
which
AI and that building blocks and DNA research will in the not too distant future be able to do. Will it be able to solve a family tree? I've always come back to the same conclusion, that I can sit on a desk with 3 birth certificates, 1 death certificate, and not know which birth this death certificate goes with, and I've been doing the job for 30 years.
Yes. You still need people in there.
So you need someone to have a look at it. It's far, far too easy. And anybody who's done any family history research and been on Ancestry and loaded up someone else's family tree and gone, well, that's wrong.
Yeah.
And that's wrong. And that's not right.
Yeah.
That's not even a man. So
that person's died before they're even born.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, a 60-year-old having birth. Yeah. So Ancestry bringing up their green leaf hints
Yeah,
and all
little
this is
hints.
great. It's great. It pushes you in, and it pulls up some records so you don't need to search for them separately yourself. Will it be able to put all of this together and build a family tree? Absolutely not. As computers get more and more powerful, they can go off on more and more possible tangents and rule off more and more things. So you may come down to a more limited solutions, but it won't be able to build a family tree.
Lovely.
That's my view.
No, not at all. Thank you. Thank you. Just before I open it up to the floor, Turi, I'm going to put you on the spot. Sorry.
Okay.
We haven't discussed the book. It's been sitting there.
I know,
so-
my publisher will kill me.
Right,
Yeah.
30 seconds on the book.
30 seconds on the book. So I have had a book that's just come out, and it's basically about DNA. A lot of it's DNA and genealogy, because that's been my kind of background, but basically about how DNA has changed the world in the last sort of 30, 40 years.
Lovely, thank you. That was a pretty whistle-stop 45 minutes. So if you have any questions for Neil and for Turi, now's your chance.
We're fast, I think, getting to the stage where we have two different family trees. We have a genealogical family tree, which we determine from the sources that we've all used for many, many years. And now we discover, through DNA testing, we've got a genetic family tree, and they are often different. And the question is, what do we do, in your case especially, where do we set the... You're dealing with legal rules, aren't you, that say a person is entitled in an intestate succession, if you like, based on certain criteria. A birth certificate, maybe. But then you might come to the stage where you've got DNA evidence, as you said earlier, which rules them in or rules them out. You might have a foundling, for instance, who's discovered to have a place in that genealogical family tree, which they could never have proved without the DNA test. Where's the law going to... Is the law going to have to change to set the criteria in a different way? Who is entitled to an estate, a share in the estate?
There isn't enough case law at the moment about ruling out, and that's also the moral question I brought in, as whether we should be ruling people out. It's unlikely we end up with two distinctly different family trees. There will be a point in time where it deviates away. We do need case history. We do need those questions to be asked about and to get the answers. The unfortunate thing with the law, and there's enough lawyers in here who will, it's very, very expensive to go down those routes where we are questioning, and we start in the High Court and end up in the Supreme Court. We're talking of hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of lawyer bills from both sides to try and question it. So it will only be determined on a very large estate.
But that trailblazing is going to happen, isn't it?
It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
We agree.
Can I clarify, how does the law in England currently stand? Is genetic evidence, positive genetic evidence, acceptable for inheritance?
It's
To
one.
rule in or rule out
It's
inheritance?
one of the building blocks which can determine a case on a case-by-case basis.
So there's not enough
So-
precedent.
So there is some precedent about people being brought into a family and inheriting because they can prove they are a family member. There is not enough, I believe, and I'm waiting for some lawyers to turn around and go, no, you're wrong. But from what I believe, is there is not very much case history on ruling people out. So as it stands at the moment, the cases which are easier to determine via DNA are the presumption cases. So where the rule of law and presumption is that if a married couple have a child and they were married at the time, the father is believed to be the father unless there is an underlying reason why he could not be the father. For instance, he was in a submarine in the middle of the Atlantic. So that presumption is that he is the father unless you can prove differently. DNA enables you to prove differently. So the rule of presumption is overruled on that.
Okay, right.
I Nobody's jeering at me saying I got it wrong. So I'm pleased about that. I'm not a liar, remember.
Any more questions?
I've got a question.
Sorry, go on.
Ancestry, DNA kits, going into that a little bit, and Ancestry linking people to family trees through the DNA kit. How accurate is that?
So up to sort of third cousin-y.
There are other providers, by the way.
Yes, there are other purveyors of DNA testing kits. Quite happily, second cousins, no problem. Third cousins, you can have third cousins who don't share DNA. So it is possible that they are related, but they don't actually share any DNA. So it's great up to a certain level. Once you're getting further afield, then you have to start to think about, well, they could be related, but they're not actually, they just by chance don't share any DNA.
And how definitive could it be? I mean, are we talking like it can link you to a line, like a particular paternal line or maternal line?
Yeah,
Or,
yeah.
But could it link you to a specific individual?
It depends on how far apart you are in terms of generations, essentially. Because as we've kind of chatted, so you get 50% of your DNA from your parents, you get on average 25% of your DNA from grandparents on average going back through. So that's where you start to lose it at around 6 generations because you can't be sure necessarily. And then you could use pieces of DNA like mitochondrial DNA in the Y chromosome, but for that they have to be related in a particular way, all male or all female line. So I'm always like, what's the question and can this actually be answered? Because I get loads of people who contact me and say, I think my mother's great-great-great-great-great-grandfather was this person. It's like, well, I'm sorry, but unless they're related in a particular way or that you happen to be really lucky with the DNA and being able to build the tree back with enough people, you probably won't be able to find that out. So it's an interesting one, but it's very, very useful for closer relationships.
To muddy the water slightly on that, I know this is definitely your ground, not mine, but talking of first cousin, second, third, fourth, we're more talking about the steps taken. So a first cousin is linked from a grandparent, a second from a great-grandparent. But as soon as we come down a generation, we get the removed bits in, so the once removed. We're talking of the 5 steps as opposed to 5 generations going back up. Just to mess it up a bit more.
Yeah.
Turi, I did my heritage tests because it has whole genome sequencing.
Yeah, they've started doing...
What's that going to give me over the ancestry test I've got?
Well, so you should, hopefully, you'll start to get a little bit more specific in terms of how much DNA you're sharing, because you're actually getting... But it's the coverage quite low at the moment, isn't it? I have to admit, I haven't looked at it, because I've heard they're doing kind of 2 times coverage or whatever, which, you should be able to get kind of more specific in terms of how much DNA sharing, because at the moment they're doing it from SNPs, and so you're getting fuzzy ends and things like that. So hopefully it'll be helpful for that kind of thing.
It'll take a while.
Yeah.
Sorry, my friend.
Oh, thank you. Yes, you mentioned how the chromosomes in a sperm are somehow, I think, a sort of juggled combination of the chromosomes from the
Grandparents.
parents.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit on how that actually works?
Okay, so this is known as recombination. So you have got 23 pairs of chromosomes. Chromosome pairs number 1 to 22 are known as our autosomes. And what happens, so chromosome pair number 23 is your sex chromosome. So us gals, we've got 2 copies of a chromosome known as chromosome X. Guys have also got 1 chromosome X, but they also have this really titchy little Y chromosome. It's very tiny. It has an important job to do. Size is, I always kind of say, size doesn't matter. It has a very important job to do. It has on a gene which essentially switches on at about 6 weeks gestation and sends the fetus down the path to becoming male. So what happens is for the autosomes and for the X chromosomes and for the X and Y just at the very tips, you get this swapping of information. So if you think about it, and it's happening both egg and sperm. So if you think about your chromosome 1 that you've got, you're going to make some sperm in a minute, right? You've got your chromosome 1 from mom, 1 from dad. You're doing it now, actually. Anywho, Right. So your chromosome 1s are going to line up next to each other. They're going to swap bits of information. And then one, completely randomly, is going to go down into each of your sperm. So the chromosome 1 that you've passed down is now a mixture of that of your parents. So that's happening for every single chromosome, and it's completely random what you're getting. So this is where, when you're looking at your siblings or your cousins and so on and so forth, you're going to be inheriting not entire chromosomes together, but chunks of your chromosomes are going to be. I need like a whiteboard and like different colored pens to basically be able to go and do this. But does that help?
Yeah, that's very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up? Is that per sperm?
Yes, and per egg.
Right.
So
they're not all the same?
No, not at all. So they're all going to be different. And so this is why, you have siblings, you're going to be sharing half of your DNA. And the chunks that you share, you're not going to have like an entire chromosome that you share the same with one another. You're going to have bits of chromosomes that you share. Yeah, I need a whiteboard or something. It's like colored thingies. Yeah.
Identical twins.
And identical twins are not even identical. We know that. Yeah.
Just wanted to ask about, obviously, you have 50% parents. When it comes to grandparents, is it from both maternal and paternal? Or
Yes. Yeah. So same thing's happening. They're swapping bits of information with one another. And on average, you're going to have about 25% of your DNA from each of your grandparents, and then 12.5 from each of that, going back. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you guys. Listen, thank you all so much for coming. I think that's extraordinarily interesting. If there's one takeaway, it's always ask, what's the question? Yeah. That's going to be my takeaway for today. Please give these guys a round of applause. Turi and Neil. Marvellous. Mates, there are still some drinks at the back. Please do help yourself.
And the book is also at the back, in the corner there, and I can sign it if anybody wants it.
Thank you so much.
The publisher's not giving them away. Well, I mean, unless you want to, Oh, good. Oh, it's good. It's a lovely topic.